Hello and welcome to this week's Medicinal Monday on the Alter Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Susanna Alter.
And it's Dr. Ben here.
And we're both naturopathic doctors who specialize in whole food, plant-based nutrition and mind-body medicine, empowering individuals to heal themselves with these strategies. And welcome to today's podcast.
So today I wanted to cover the topic of really why we do not at Alter Health generally recommend that people undergo various functional lab testing. And of course, I think it's important to preface this by saying that, yes, this is generalization, and we are not in any way making medical recommendations or bashing any lab tests or functional medicine doctors or anything like that. We're just sharing our approach, which is based on our philosophy, but also kind of our understanding of physiology and practice and all these kind of things. And I guess just to start it off, Suzanne, I thought maybe we could talk about how, the goal of the functional lab test, just maybe defining functional lab tests, what we're talking about, maybe in that category, food sensitivity tests,
stool panels,
microbiome analysis, genetic testing,
more kind of like specific metabolic markers. There's really like nitty-gritty metabolic tests.
Maybe the other big category is like toxicity screens, mold testing, Lyme testing. This is a lot of controversial stuff, a lot of controversial things. And long story short, each one of these things can be a very deep rabbit hole if we go in that direction. And a few things right off the bat. First, any lab test, anything, whether it's a CBC, a blood count, or a metabolic panel, or a hormone screen, or whatever thing, any lab test is just a snapshot of your physiology, of your biochemistry at that very point in time. And everything goes up and down and all around. Of course, there are lab markers that are more steady, like hemoglobin A1C versus a blood stick blood sugar test, or a finger stick blood sugar test. But in any event, it's just a snapshot in time. The other thing, a lot of these tests have more sensitivity and specificity than others. For example, food sensitivity tests, not very sensitive at all. In fact, I know that, I know personally, some people have sent in 2 or 3 samples from one person, 2 or 3 blood samples from one person, gets the results back from one blood stick, one snapshot in one person, one period of time. And all 3 of these results are different, showing different levels of sensitivity to different types of food. And with regard to the food sensitivity test, we know that that's generally capturing a generalized inflammatory state of the intestinal system, allowing, generally showing us that there's some degree of quote unquote leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability, allowing some food particles to pass through the intestinal lining and trigger an immune reaction in the bloodstream. So that's kind of one example of why we don't recommend a food sensitivity test. But yeah, I think the bigger, more important picture, or more important point that I think is helpful to understand, is when we do go down these rabbit holes, a lot of times we're going to find what we're looking for, because of the nature of a lot of these tests. And when we find what we're looking for, then a couple things are going to happen. First of all, our thoughts might run wild. Oh my gosh, I got this. I'm positive for this. I'm negative for this. I need more of that. And we evoke this kind of feedback loop. And then oftentimes we, quote unquote, need to correct this imbalance with a series of expensive products or supplements or procedures or things like that may or may not lead to any sort of sustainable benefit. And what else do you have to add?
Well, I would say from our perspective, the reason why we don't generally recommend these tests is because we really need to ask ourselves the question, okay, if we ran this test and something showed up as positive or something showed up as being imbalanced or whatever, how would it ultimately change our approach to supporting the body and healing itself and resolving the symptoms? And if, it doesn't actually change what the approach would be, then that extra information, some people think, more information is better. But I think the biggest danger of all that extra information, and once again, you don't know if it's actually accurate or not. You don't know if it's just a transient thing that's showing up in your body that's going to be gone tomorrow or next
Mhm.
week. The big danger of that extra information is that your mind can take it, to mean something is going going very haywire in your body, when really, with the right support, your body can actually
Yeah.
resolve itself very,
And
very healthfully as it's
I'm
designed to.
I'm glad that you point out, like, the intention is to allow these tests to dictate the therapeutic approach. And yeah, if your therapeutic approach includes lots of supplements and protocols and things like that, then it's like, all right, you get positive for this. That means you load on this approach. But if the therapeutic approach is grounded in lifestyle medicine, back to the basics, simplicity, less is more, self healing, then oftentimes we build health from the ground up and we create more health regardless of what the transient imbalances might be.
Mhm.
So, and also another reason why I think it's best to avoid generally a lot of these functional lab tests, because we can gather so much more meaningful information when we are guided by just symptoms and feelings in the body, because a lot of times, let's face it, a lot of people feel unwell and then they get their basic blood work done, their thyroid panel, whatever, their lipids, inflammation markers, and it's like, oh, everything looks pretty good. So there's this need, this desire to figure out, oh, well, I don't feel well, so I need to see something that's wrong so that I know that there's something wrong with me so I can maybe start feeling better. But in reality, there's so many reasons why we might not feel well. Again, some of them being more, like acute and severe, and some being more transient. But in any event, it's so helpful to just tune in and be guided by our body's, wisdom and symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, I can really relate to the point of view, because it's funny. I feel like you could definitely listen to us talking and being like, well, you guys aren't really applying the whole like diagnostic process. And actually, no, we don't. In our practice, we don't diagnose. We don't. What we do in our practice is we support individuals in creating,
Healing themselves.
yeah, in creating a lifestyle that is health promoting and promotes balance in the body so the body heals itself naturally. So we don't do the diagnostic work, um, even so, it might sound like, oh, you guys don't honor the diagnostic approach of practicing medicine or this or that. And I just want to put out there, no, 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 that's not the case at all. It can be very helpful to actually get a diagnosis depending on what's going on in the body. It's specifically if there's something more serious going on in the body, of course. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I can definitely relate to the point of view of wanting to gather more information. I was in that position myself when I was dealing with all sorts of chronic symptoms in my early 20s. And I did go down the functional medicine rabbit hole. And I spent thousands of dollars getting more and more information. And then, of course, the functional approach to my lab results was to try to bring everything into balance with the use of supplements. This is a little high, you need this supplement. This is a little low, you need this supplement. But there wasn't even much follow up, oh, we need to retest this later to make sure that, you don't need to stay on these supplements forever. Or like there wasn't really much follow up long term of when I can get off of these supplements. Do I need to stay on these forever? It was kind of not that
Empowering.
it wasn't empowering, that's for sure. And it also didn't seem like in the beginning, it seems very systematic and methodical, but I feel like there's not much follow up most of the
Mm,
time. And my experience, and what I've also seen clinically with lots of people, and also the people who come to work with us who have worked with a lot of functional practitioners in the past, is that ultimately, even with all of the pushing of the buttons with the supplements and everything like that, they didn't actually feel better. Their symptoms
yeah.
didn't actually resolve. Really, they were just spending a lot of money on all these tests and supplements and protocols. Um, and
I'm glad you brought up the money point, because that's one thing that I'm always kind of coming to in my thinking. Like, if only people spent more money investing in their health rather than investing in trying to understand what may be going wrong, then we'd be in a far better place. And then also back to, what our philosophy of health is that we are, each individual is their ultimate own primary care provider, their own healer. They're responsible for creating health within themselves. That's an empowering approach. It's an approach that is based on, taking responsibility for our actions and creating health from the ground up through how we're eating and what we're drinking and how we're moving our bodies and how we're sleeping, and all of these things that we call the determinants of health, and really focusing and investing our time and our energy and our money in creating a strong foundation of health. And regardless of where our Lyme disease markers are, regardless of what level of mercury toxicity you have, your body is going to come back into balance. Your immune system is going to be optimized. Your detoxification pathways are going to be optimized. So back to that point that you brought up earlier about just the therapeutic strategy, when you are focusing on the ground level, you are creating health from the ground up, and then you heal everything. Your body is supported in healing itself. And maybe it is a long game, like a more sustainable plan, like not just like, oh, I'm just going to take this anti-inflammatory supplement because these inflammatory markers are a little out of whack, and maybe, yeah, I can test them in a couple months and see them go down, but are you really feeling any better? Are your symptoms resolved? Is your energy better? Is your vitality up? What's your body telling you? So when we're focusing on that, just the fundamental level of the foundation of health, then everything gets better. Everything comes back into balance. And for sure, maybe some people who continue down the rabbit holes of looking at these functional lab tests and these markers, maybe there will be continue to be some anomalies because of the lack of sensitivity and specificity with a lot of these tests. But much more important thing is that people feel better. People feel better. Back to that other point of just allowing ourselves to focus, allowing our thoughts and our energy to focus on creating health, creating good stuff, rather than focus on understanding what's wrong, and trying to see what's wrong.
Mhm.
Focusing on the good rather than the quote unquote bad or negative, so to speak.
Yeah. I guess I just want to mention real briefly that we do love a lot of more kind of common standard tests
Yeah.
that do give you a really good understanding of just how the body's most basic organ systems are functioning. Things like a complete blood count and comprehensive metabolic panel, and even looking into a thyroid screen
Of course.
and a lipid panel to rule out the most common risk factor for the most common disease in our country. That's the most common killer of heart disease. Also, to screen for vitamin D levels, because those can be low commonly. And if someone does have symptoms of, fatigue, or they have digestive issues, you might also want to, look for an anemia panel, making sure that they're good on their iron and vitamin B12 and things like this. And of course, you suss out based off of symptomology which of these more standard labs are more necessary and which are just good kind of maintenance standard kind of screening tests. But for those basic labs that most doctors will order on like an annual kind of office visit, you can tell so much from what's going on in the body from those tests, and they are much more reliable, much more specific, and
they're cheaper.
And they're definitely cheaper.
And usually insurance is going to cover them if we do have insurance. And yeah, they're not going to be telling us all the things, but they're telling us enough. Mm-hmm. And we got a comment about opening up a satellite office in South Carolina. Well, we don't even have an office in Colorado where we are. we don't have an office. We work from our homes, which allows us to connect with you all over the world. So if you didn't already know, Alter Health is a fully digital online business model, practice model, and we support you from the comfort of your own home, empowering you in your creating health from the ground up. So any last, anything that we forgot to mention with regard to the topic of why we don't generally recommend these functional lab tests? And if there are any questions like, what about this test? What about that test? I'm sure a lot of those questions are, because oh my gosh, there's so many more. And I think this is an important point as well. There's so many more tests that are coming like direct to consumer. So you can like take out the doctor altogether. And to be honest, I'm not sure about this stuff, because then the doctor is that level of, critical thinking that hopefully lies between, because then you might be more susceptible to being sold all sorts of stuff after you get the results. I know that's oftentimes the case. So I would really think twice about any sort of direct to consumer lab. Of course, that maybe they're going to be less expensive, but I don't know. And maybe also just need to say that when it comes to a lot of these specific tests, of course, I'm not going to be an expert in all of them, because there are so many, and we don't do them practically professionally. So it's like, I'm sure someone could say, oh, well, this one can show you this and that and that. And then again, the point is, does it really matter? Does it really matter when our focus is in creating health? And I guess the argument from our stance is, generally, no, these generally don't matter that much. That generally the cost benefit analysis, we can focus more on, again, just creating health, from the low-hanging fruit in all our day-to-day lives. And if you're curious about how to do that, how to create more health from the ground up, we just encourage you to check out our Thrive on Plants program at Alter Health. That's how we work with individuals. And also, if you'd like to join Alter Health is just a supporter, a monthly supporter. You can get a weekly recipe guide, a whole food plant-based recipe guide, if you head over to alterhealth.locals.com.
Right. That's just $11 a month. Get a weekly recipe guide and also an invitation to a monthly Zoom call for just supporters with the doctors, where we can answer any questions you have.
And of course, Thrive on Plants covers a lot. It's a very comprehensive experiential educational program. So thanks for tuning in. Feel free to leave any comments, feedback, share this with someone who's going down the rabbit holes. I'm just kidding. Don't share it with them. They've already got enough rabbit holes to go down. But hopefully you're feeling empowered in your health, and we look forward to staying in touch and seeing you guys next time.
Mm-hmm. Bye for now.